You're watching because you need storage that actually works for you, not just a rack of shiny numbers on a spec sheet. You've probably been burned before spending a lot on an enclosure that looked perfect on paper, only to discover it was a hassle to fit into your workflow, or it turned out to be overkill for what you really need. If you're on the fence about whether a high-capacity, multi-bay chassis is worth the price tag, stick around. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the problem you're trying to solve. Most creators, small business IT admins, and even hobbyist home labs need a way to house several drives without sacrificing speed or expandability. You might have a couple of 4 TB 7,200 revolutions per minute SATA drives for bulk media archives, a pair of 2 TB SSDs for your active projects, and maybe a fast NVMe for a scratch disk. You want them all in one box, you want hot swap capability, and you want the whole thing to sit nicely on a desk or rack without turning your workspace into a sauna. The OWC ThunderBay Flex 8 promises exactly that: 8 universal bays that accept 3.5-inch, 2.5-inch SATA or SAS drives, plus U.2/M.2 NVMe modules, all managed through a front-mounted USB-C and 2 USB-A 10 gigabits per second ports. It also throws in a PCIe X16 connector with an X4 lane slot for extra capture cards or networking. Who should actually consider this box? If you're a video editor who regularly moves terabytes of 4K footage between drives, a photographer who needs a reliable RAID for RAW files, or an indie game developer with a mix of large asset libraries and fast build caches, the Flex 8 gives you the flexibility to tailor each bay to a specific purpose. It's also a solid choice for a small office that wants a shared storage pool without committing to a full-blown NAS, especially if you already have a Mac or PC with a free PCIe slot and you're comfortable handling RAID software like SoftRAID. Who should skip it? If you're a casual user who only needs 1 or 2 external drives for occasional backups, you'll probably end up paying for more bays than you'll ever fill. Likewise, if your workstation lives on a laptop that only has a single USB-C port and you can't spare the PCIe slot for the expansion card, the ThunderBay Flex 8 becomes more of a stationary server than a portable solution. And if you're looking for a turnkey, plug-and-play NAS with its own OS and built-in Ethernet, you'll be better served by a dedicated network appliance instead of a drive enclosure that relies on your host machine for file sharing. Let's walk through a real-world setup. Imagine a mid-size post-production studio with 3 editors. Each editor plugs a 2 TB NVMe module into the front bays for their current project, while the back 8 slots hold a mix of 6 TB SATA drives in a RAID 5 configuration for long-term storage. The front USB-C port connects to a 10 gigabits per second Ethernet adapter in the PCIe slot, giving the whole box a dedicated high-speed network link without eating a PCIe lane on the host. When an editor finishes a project, they simply drag the finished folder over the network, and the RAID 5 array continues to protect the data. If a drive fails, the hot swap design lets you pull the bad 3.5-inch drive out and slide a new one in without shutting down the whole system. That kind of keep-it-running reliability is what separates a professional-grade enclosure from a hobbyist toy. Now, the practical strengths. The most obvious is the universal bay design. You can start with a handful of cheap SATA drives, then later upgrade a few slots to NVMe as your budget grows. That future-proofing saves you from having to buy a whole new chassis when you need faster media. The front panel USB-C and 2 10 gigabits per second USB-A ports are another win because they let you connect fast card readers, external monitors, or even a secondary laptop without digging for rear ports on your computer. The PCIe X4 lane slot is a quiet hero. You can drop in a capture card for live streaming, a 10 gigabits per second Ethernet card for low-latency file transfers, or another NVMe expansion board if you need more raw speed than the internal bays can provide. On the flip side, there are hidden trade-offs. The enclosure is physically sizable, it won't fit comfortably on a cramped desk, and you'll need a dedicated power brick that draws a noticeable amount of electricity. The cooling system is adequate for typical SATA workloads, but if you pack all 8 bays with high-performance NVMe modules, you'll notice the fans ramp up noticeably, and the internal temperature can climb into the high 40°C. That's not a deal-breaker if you monitor the temps, But it's something to be aware of if you plan to run the unit 24/7 in a small office. The PCIe slot is limited to X4 lanes, so you won't get the full bandwidth of a native X16 card, meaning a high-end capture card will still be throttled compared to a direct PCIe install. Finally, the